Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Strategy and Stratagems series for Warhammer 2 Rise of the Tomb Kings DLC. So this is my first ever YouTube series that I had in mind for a long time, where in this series we're going to look in depth at Warhammer 2 campaign strategies and mechanics and really be self-reflexive upon our own decision process in obtaining victory as the Tomb Kings. Um, in this series, we will heavily feature commentary and discussion, and I heavily encourage everyone to comment on the videos with responses to some of the things that I have been discussing in the campaign. The point of this series is to really take an in-depth look into what constitutes a Total War, Warhammer in this case, campaign process, so to speak. So this Let's Play will be part podcast, part discussion. I hope you enjoy. So for this first episode, we're going to begin a campaign, and we're going to focus on the Eye of the Vortex just to have some narrative heft to this series, so that we're going somewhere.
I fight for the greater good.
And of the Tomb Kings, I was deciding whether to play as Khatep or Khalida, and I think for interest's sake, I think Khalida has a very interesting starting location, having to deal with both High Elves and Lizardmen, both providing a very interesting initial diplomatic and strategic arena to deal with, especially her start next to the Southern Sentinels, and obviously Lizardmen are far superior in the main line to the Tomb Kings, especially early on. Furthermore, I think Khalida is a really interesting character, and actually, I think sort of I think the play style of this particular legendary lord is not exactly that I'm used to, so this will, in essence, be a learning process for me. So, just going over the capabilities of Khalida to keep in mind. So her faction is Court of Liberus. Her suitable climate is jungle, so that's where we'll get our most efficiency and effectiveness in construction of our main settlements. She has diplomatic relations +20 with Tomb Kings. Obviously, where we're starting, that won't be much of a consideration, because we'll be starting off in the southwest part of Lustria, where the only Tomb Kings faction is Khalida. And furthermore, the faction effects with the Court of Liberas is +20% ammunition for all armies. So definitely a ranged, focused faction. And ranged is not necessarily something that I'm used to playing. So sort of a skirmishy, maybe more tactically oriented Tomb Kings faction. And then for the Lord effects, enables poison attacks, which is always great. In Warhammer 2, poison is one of the most effective debuffs to enemy units. It reduces armor piercing damage, it reduces basic damage, it reduces speed, it reduces, I believe, even missile damage, and it even reduces melee attack, if I'm not mistaken. So that's for the Lord. Furthermore, attrition minus 50% casualties suffered from all attrition. So this means Khalida is a very aggressive type of character, being able to push into those tainted lands or lands that attrit away Khalida's forces. So I think this is a very interesting playstyle of being aggressive strategically, since we don't take as much casualties from attrition, which is great. And her last ability is Untainted +3 for local province. This is for combating vampiric corruption and chaos corruption, which may in effect start hampering our own army progress, as well as dealing attrition damage and causing public order problems in our home provinces. For additional starting units for Khalida, we have Necropolis Knights, which is Tomb King's high tier heavy cavalry. I'm not exactly an expert with all the units per se. I haven't played much Warhammer 2 multiplayer nor battles myself, so a lot of the battle mechanics I'll be reflecting upon to the audience and trying to learn as we go along. Heck, maybe in the future I'll do a multiplayer battle series, which is absolutely possible. Possibly of Warhammer, possibly of any other war games, so to speak. And her other unit are Sepulchral Stalkers. This seems to be like a mid-tier anti-cavalry sort of heavy spear unit, or like an anti-cavalry support unit. Like instead of using skeleton spearmen, you'd use Sepulchral Stalkers, which have greater punching power because of higher weapon strength, and bonus versus large as well. Okay, so just to keep things in mind as we proceed into this Let's Play podcast discussion series, this series I'm going to take as much time as I need to be able to discuss strategy and tactics with you, the audience, as best I can. And that will require deliberation and self-reflection in real time. So if there might not be a lot of action, there's a lot of I'm intending to put a lot of vocal content into this series, but obviously we're going to base a lot of our discussion off of what we're doing on screen. And I, of course, highly encourage everyone to write in the comments to provide advice or questions for me to consider for other series or other episodes. Maybe there are certain strategic approaches that I haven't thought of with Khalida. Basically, I want to help not just myself to learn how to strategically and tactically look at Warhammer 2 rather than just play through it like just... I mean, for funsies, sure, Warhammer 2 is for fun, but really dig into the thought process that goes into playing a Warhammer 2 campaign. So the goal is to maybe advise some veteran players, but also help newer players and average players to sort of understand, okay, so how am I going to approach certain objectives? What are my short-term, long-term objectives? What are the effective approaches to get to those objectives and whatnot? So for this campaign, I'll be playing on hard difficulty, because I don't want the AI to be overly ridiculously spammy with 20 stacks of units all the time with very hard and legendary difficulty. And I will be setting battles to 60 minutes so that if we start fighting sieges that take a long time, then obviously we'll have enough time to really show massive sieges and whatnot. And yes, that's how we will roll. So I will let the opening cinematic play through for those who haven't seen the Rise of the Tomb King's opening cinematic, and I'll see you once Khalida introduces us to our situations. Let's get rolling.
The sands of time ravage all. Mortals, monuments, even civilizations cannot stand against it. Their remnants lost beneath the dunes, awaiting discovery by the brave. Oh, foolish.
What's that? I can hear something. Come here, quiet.
Like time itself, the living are not welcome in Nehekara. For this is the land of the dead, ruled by the Tomb Kings, where only the expired may serve. All bow before High Queen Khalida, the embodiment of the Asp. She has been sent far from Lybaras by her beloved goddess. Eternity was promised, but the Tomb Kings awoke to unlife, no longer beatific sovereigns. Their kingdoms as decayed as their bodies. The glory of Khemri lost, forgotten. A comet, an omen. The Black Pyramid stirs, but does not wake. A vessel of untold power, awaiting a new master. But it remains sealed. The Lich Priests are tasked with finding access. They venture deep into the catacombs, seeking clues. Discovering an obelisk inscribed with hieroglyphs as old as the desert gods. The answer lies in the 9 books of Nagash, the original tomes of undead lore, authored by the Arch-Necromancer. Due to the turbulence of the vortex across the ocean, not 9, but only 5 books are needed. Then, the pyramid shall open. Time has seen the books lost, scattered. Other Tomb Kings will seek them, for all desire the Black Pyramid. Begin the search. Raise your warriors. The legions of Khemri march to war.
I come for you, creatures of the night. It is foolish to think the jungles can conceal your presence from me. But who will be the first to taste my poison? The lizard men, perhaps? Lastria teems with life, yet I bring only death. And when there is no more blood, where will you feed, vampire? I travel far from my throne, not merely to end you, creature, but for the books of Nagash. The knowledge they contain will grant me strength over Neferata. My hatred cannot be sated any longer. By Asaph, I strike out for vengeance and justice.
Okay, well, Khalida described basically the lore implications of our strategic considerations. But there's definitely one thing that she pointed out, that Khalida pointed out just now, to keep in mind, especially for the opening moves of our faction, is that the main opponent that we will be facing are the Lizardmen, who mostly occupy Lustria. There are some High Elves and Dark Elves, and a few Skaven holdings in Lustria, but it's mostly Lizardmen. And the Lizardmen are in general very dangerous to the Tomb Kings, especially early on, and we'll get into that when we start discussing the strengths of the Tomb King's army. Now, before I want to end this introductory episode, where I apologize if there wasn't enough action to go around, there will be more action as we go along, but primarily this is for really in-depth looking at the faction and really looking into decision making. I would like to go over how the Tomb Kings work in this in Warhammer 2. Because with their unique features in mind, we can then construct the bases for our own strategy. So, I will read. The Court of Libras, Books of Nagash. Within the Black Pyramid a great power lies, dormant, waiting to be unlocked by the bearer of the 9 Books of Nagash. Collect the Books of Nagash and win the battle for the Black Pyramid to achieve this campaign's victory conditions. So this first feature is that our long-term goals is to collect 5 Books of Nagash, which enhance our own capabilities once we obtain them. And second of all is to capture the Black Pyramid and win the final quest battle, which will require good tactical skill. Now, these are just the things to strive for. Initially, we don't necessarily have to go for the Books of Nagash. It's not something that has to designate or define our early strategy, but it's something to keep in mind, especially going into the long term. Okay, next feature, Day of Awakening. Tomb King's factions can recruit units into their armies without the need to pay for the recruitment or upkeep. Instead, each unit has a limited initial recruitment capacity which can be increased by constructing additional buildings. Now this feature, the Day of Awakening, is one of the key elements of Tomb King's strategic and tactical considerations, since in essence, money is of little use to army composition and army construction for the Tomb Kings. In essence, the army, instead of being dictated by trade and income, is dictated more or less by our own military infrastructure, which obviously is dictated by money, but the army composition and army recruitment in itself is only dictated by our skill at constructing an effective and wide-ranging military infrastructure. Aside from that, there are 2 units that the Tomb Kings recruit that can be recruited infinitely without any limitations, but we'll get into that in the next episode when I discuss Tomb King military doctrine and army composition. The next feature, Dynasties. Tomb King's factions must delve into their past secrets to increase the number of armies or heroes they can field, or to enlist the aid of mighty lords from ancient dynasties. So this third feature is one of the defining elements of Tomb King long-term strategic play. So instead of having a basic tech tree where you simply just get basic bonuses of percentage increases to income or armor or melee attack or damage to all your various units, the Tomb King tech tree is essential to Tomb King survival and long-term strategic play, since dynasties will allow us to recruit more armies, which obviously gives us more potential to act upon the map of Warhammer. So we'll have to consider the dynasties very carefully in which approach we're going to take and how we're going to take it. And finally, the last unique feature of the Tomb Kings is the mortuary cult. Tomb Kings can spend their canopic jars within the mortuary cult, where lich priests combine them with trade resources to craft magic items or awaken legions of legend, mighty warriors who can be recruited to battle. So this mortuary cult, I would say, for the purposes of this campaign, is more of a secondary strategic consideration to keep in mind, because the dynasties and the Day of Awakening mechanic are directly influencing Tomb King tactical and strategic considerations and doctrine. The mortuary cult, I think, more or less provides short-term strategic goals. So for example, the Tomb Kings have a second resource, which is canopic jars up here. Canopic jars allows us to do various unique things such as craft new powerful magic items and recruit powerful units to our cause, but they do not define our own strategy. They are something to strive for, probably in the short term, to help us get to our long-term goals, but not necessarily our defining elements. However, to recruit and construct these powerful items and recruit these new units, it is of vital importance to consider resources. To build these magic items, we need unique resources. And for that purposes, we need really good map awareness to understand, okay, which geography provides which kind of resource, and is some kind of resource easy to get to. Can we use it to our advantage, or is it better, say, to trade it or like raise this settlement and get this resource from a different source? So these are things that we have to keep in mind. So at this point, I'd like to end the episode, this rather introductory episode. I hope everyone has enjoyed this more in-depth and podcast approach to a Let's Play, because I think a lot can be got out of Warhammer, and really any strategy game for that matter, by seriously considering factors such as strategy, tactics, objectives, our own interests in the map, and how we're going to reach those interests, and then finally the execution, how we're going to move our armies, what are we going to do, how are we going to fight our battles. And these are the things that we need to keep in mind when going forward. So please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let me know if you enjoy this series. And I hope to see you next time in the next installment of Strategy and Stratagems. Have a great day.